Punnett squares, it's helpful to always have a key. So I would always write this down so you can refer to it. So write that down in your margin. So we're going to do the Punnett squares. There are the 3 Punnett squares on page 4. The ones on the TV. So for tomatoes, we're going to look at the color of tomatoes. Red is dominant over yellow. So I put dominant and recessive just to remind myself that I need an uppercase letter for dominant, capital R, and a lowercase r for yellow. Notice, some people would want to say, let's use a Y for yellow. We don't use 2 different letters unless we're doing a dihybrid cross, which is 16 boxes. If you're doing the ones that only have the 4 boxes, you just use 1 letter, uppercase and lowercase. Okay, so the first problem says cross a homozygous recessive with a homozygous dominant. So Connor, if we're using our tomato key, what letter should I use for homozygous recessive?
You would use lowercase.
Yep, and how many lowercase?
2, I
2.
believe.
Yep, so because homozygous means the same, recessive means lowercase, so I would use like this. So that's my first parent, homozygous recessive. The second one, the other parent says homozygous dominant. Charlie, what 2 letters for homozygous dominant?
R.
Capital or lowercase? Yep, so 2 capital letters, like so.
Miss Hageman, do they have to be R? Do they have?
Now, if you did a different letter, it's fine. But some people didn't do it at all, because I said that they could wait until we started today.
Okay.
So if you used A, like they did in the sample problem, it's okay. Okay, then when you do a Punnett square, in order to know what goes in these 4 boxes, which are the offspring, you just have to combine your 2 alleles. So this letter and this letter will combine here. You always put the capital letter first. Okay, and same thing over here. This letter and this letter combine in this box. The R, capital R slides over. Put the capital first and the lowercase second. On this box, this one's going to slide down, this one slides over. In the last box, this capital R slides over, the little r goes down. Say, so these are our 4 offspring from these 2 parents. Now, it says, what's the genotype ratio? This is the part that's actually a little bit tricky to do. So for genotype, you want to remember that it's asking for the genetic makeup. Right here, here's my key. So it's not what you can see. Remember, phenotype is what you can see. Genotype is what you can't see, the actual allele combinations. So you want to describe all 4 boxes. So when you have a ratio, you want to count up how many are each type. So since they're all the same, you just count them up and say, okay, I have 4. And then the easy way is just to write down the letter combinations, right? Or you could actually write out what they stand for. So I could go 4 like that. Is there any other combination? Nope, so you put a colon and you put a 0. That's my ratio for genotype. But you could also write it like this. You could say, some people will say, well, use percents instead. I could say, okay, 100%, because each box is 25%. And then if I said, describe that genotype, that would be heterozygous and red. So you have to be able to do both, heterozygous and red. So when you do genotype, you always want to use the words homozygous or heterozygous in your answer, or make sure you include the letters. If you don't use this word and you just put red, that's the phenotype, not the genotype. Okay? Now for the phenotype, Victor, how it looks. What can I write for how they will look?
Red.
And then what number?
Oh,
We're doing a ratio. For genotype ratio.
100%. Like, 4 to 0.
Yep, so 4, and always have to label, so 4 red to 0. 4 to 0. Now, if someone said on the paper, if it said reduce to lowest terms, then you just go, if I was reducing it down, it would just be 1 to 0. And this also would be 1 to 0, because if you reduce it, and there's no other possibility, it just goes to 1. So that one's done. Or if they ask what percent will be red, remember, every box is 25%, So notice they have, as long as they have one capital R, they'll be red. So 25 plus 25 plus 25 plus 25 gives you 100% red. Okay, now on to problem number 2. So the second problem, let's have, Daphne, you're gonna do this one. 2 heterozygous individuals. So what letter should I use for the tomatoes if I was crossing 2 heterozygous individuals? So Gianna, since you don't have your packet, write out the whole problem too, so that way you'll know what problem that you did.
Side question, do you know substitute?
Do you have to?
Yeah.
Yes. Make sure your name's on both. So if both parents are heterozygous, what does hetero mean, first of all?
Heterozygous
On the board.
means different.
Different. So if both parents are heterozygous, we have to use different alleles, which means one of each.
So PP and PP.
We're still using this key though for the tomatoes. So we're gonna use,
Right then you were doing purple and.
that was from the TV example,
Oh, okay.
okay?
So it's R, capital R, lowercase r,
Yep.
capital R, lowercase r.
And that's right, so these parents are both heterozygous. And then when you cross it through, what would go in this first box, Connor, right here?
That would be our, capital.
Yep, 2 capital R's, and then Victor, what goes here?
Capital or lowercase r.
Good, what goes here, Gianna?
Capital lowercase.
And Gabe, what goes here?
Lowercase r's.
Okay, Charlie, let's have you do the genotype. So for the genotype ratio, now this one's a little bit harder than that one because they're not all the same. So when you do a ratio, you always want to start in the box that has the homozygous dominant. So you start here, then you go here, and then you end up at this spot right here. You guys hear that? Whenever you do ratios, you start here, then here, then there, then here. So,
1 RR,
so 1 capital R,
2 R lowercase r, so capital R lowercase r,
okay, good.
and then 1 lowercase r.
That's right, very good, that's exactly right, 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. So if I used words, I would say 1 homozygous red, 2 heterozygous red, 1 homozygous yellow. So make sure that you know what these things stand for. Homozygous red, heterozygous red, homozygous yellow.
Could we just say 1, 2, 1?
You can't just use numbers, you need labels, okay?
What
Same thing for
happens
phenotype, when you do a phenotype, you can't just use numbers, you need labels.
What happens if you just use numbers?
And you'll lose points when I grade it, okay? Because if I only use numbers here and here, there would be no difference, because they're just numbers, and then I wouldn't know if you know the difference, okay? So for phenotype, Victor, how it looks, how will these offspring look?
25% small, 75% tall.
What we're doing tomatoes.
Oh, I mean, 25%.
So start here, remember, you start here, then we go to this one, that's last.
Okay. 25, or, 75% red and 25% yellow.
Yep, so he said 75% red to 25% yellow, so it's fine to use percentages. But I could also, instead of using percents, I could just use numbers. And I would just count, like how many red, how many yellow. So just go, okay, this one's red, it has a capital R, capital R, capital R. So those 3, I could go 3 red to 1 yellow, or you can use percents. Either one is correct. So the main difference is, when you do the genotype, you gotta add the words heterozygous and homozygous to your answer, or you have to show the letter combinations, okay? Okay, the third problem on the notes. The third problem says, try crossing a heterozygous individual with a homozygous recessive one. So Gianna, what should I use for a heterozygous individual?
R,
What kind of R?
capital R, lowercase.
So capital R, lowercase, for the heterozygous individuals, right? And then Gabe, what about the homozygous recessive one?
Two lowercase r.
Okay, very good. So now we're ready to cross it through, so you combine those letters together here. This one and this one combine right here. This one slides down, that one slides over. This one slides down, this one slides over. Okay, so for genotype ratio, who wants to try the genotype ratio? Anybody? Howard?
Yeah. Would it be, RR? Oh, sorry. What is that one for exactly?
We can either use numbers or percent.
Oh, okay. Okay, it would be, 2RR.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay, so two.
Or, yeah, two.
Capital R, little r, which stands for heterozygous red, and you put your colon,
Yep, and then, two lowercase r's.
yep, very good, which, that stands for two homozygous yellow. Now, I can reduce that to what?
Reduce it.
What numbers would it be when I reduce it? So it's 2 to 2,
Yep,
would go down to what? Because it'll be the same ratio, it'll just be in lower terms, so like if you divide 2 divided by 2,
oh, yeah, would be 1.
yep, so the ratio is also 1 to 1. So most times you'll just reduce it down to lowest terms, okay? Then for phenotype, how it's gonna look, Gianna, describe the phenotype of these offspring here.
50% RR for red, and then 50% lowercase r, lowercase
Should I
r,
should I use these in my answer?
yeah.
No, because I can't see that, remember this is what you see. So
Okay.
you just write down what you see. So how many are gonna be like this?
2,
2, what color?
red.
Right, so this one and this one will be red, because there's one dominant allele, and red is dominant, so you put 2 red, and then how many yellow?
Wait, I thought you did percentage.
Well, you can, but first we're doing this ratio, now you can do it in whole numbers like this, but we can also do it in percents. So how many yellow, Gianna?
2,
2, that's right, and I can reduce it down to what? Yeah, 1 to 1. So again, reminder, when you do a problem, always label, and then I'll reduce it, and you can do whole numbers. Remember, each box stands for 1, so 1, 1, 1, 1, so you have 4 total, or it can be 25% for each box and give you a total of 100%. Sometimes the problem I ask you, what percent of the offspring look like this? Sometimes, like on page 7, everyone turn to page 7. Page 7, and in all the classes I've taught, this is like the 6th time I'm teaching this, everybody is missing this on number 18. Go to 18 on page 7. So 18 says, because everyone's so used to doing ratios, they've been practicing the ratios, so they just automatically do ratios and they're not reading the problem. So 18 says, what percent of their offspring will have red fruit? So highlight that or underline it. In 18, what percent of the offspring will have red fruit? John, do you not have a packet? Okay, go in the top drawer and get one. Okay, 19. 19, in the margin of 19, right, you have to show your work of math. You have to show your math for 19. Write that down, must show your math.
Where?
Just write that, a note to yourself. Must show math.
Oh.
And 20, highlight or underline where it says, what percent of the kids will look like Trey? What percent of the kids will look like Trey? So that's not asking for a ratio, it's just what percent will look like their dad. So when you do a problem, always see what are they asking you for after you do the Punnett square. Okay, now we're on number 16. I want everyone to try 16 on your own. And I'm gonna come by and check your work for 16.
Like on page 7?
Yep, page 7. So we've done 3 practice problems. You should be able to do 16. But if you get stuck, raise your hand. I want you to do the Punnett square and do the genotype and phenotype. Page 7, Victor.
Is it the 4 squares?
Yep, 4 squares. All of these ones today are 4 squares. These are called monohybrid. And anyone know why they call it monohybrid? Because mono means what?
One.
One. We're looking at one trait only. In this case, we're looking at like color of the tomato. Or in number 16, the only one trait we're looking at is dimples. We're not looking at two things at the same time. Only looking at one thing. So that's why they say monohybrid. Okay, so draw your Punnett square. And make sure you leave room so you can write the parents on the top and side. Some kids are writing it like this, way up at the top of next to the words. And there was no space to write the parent letters. You have to leave yourself some space so you can write the parents' letters up top. So I'm gonna combine, check your work. If you are really good at these, you can keep going and do all of them. I had some kids in last period that got the whole page done and had time to spare because they're just like understanding it. So if you understand it, just keep going.
What if you don't?
If you don't, we can go slow. We're gonna go over them together. Well, we have time to do about 3 problems in class or so. So what's nice is number 16, they tell you the letters what to use. They're saying use a capital D or a little d.
How do you know if it's capital D or capital D lowercase?
Because if it says in the problems they're homozygous dimple, then you use 2 capitals. If it says heterozygous for dimples, you're gonna use 1 of each.
Oh,
So-
it says heterozygous.
So if you see the word hetero, just think, that means different, so it would be like this. That's hetero. Homozygous would be like this, either 2 capital D's or 2 little d's for homozygous.
Okay.
Okay, when you get 16 done, just call me over and I'll see if it's right. So you have to write down, is this the genotype or the phenotype? So let's see. So, I would suggest using pencil to do something. So, woman is related, right? Man is heterozygous.
Oh, that's, okay.
Alright, check it out.
Is that right?
So genotype, no,
No.
no, cause look, it says cross a woman with no dimples. So remember, no dimples, and it tells you no dimples is little d. If there's one capital D, that means she has dimples. So this one's right, that the heterozygous part is right, but this one's got changed.
So it's
Erase.
lowercase d?
Yeah, lowercase d. Because the only way you can have no dimples is 2 lowercase or capital letters. And then erase your geno and phenotype.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay, now remember, I'm still recording, so no commentary. Yep, very good.
Are you gonna post this on this
Yes.
classroom?
I am.
Don't post that on YouTube.
Okay, genotype. This is incorrect. Let's erase all this.
Wait, is that working piece only?
Yes.
Yeah,
No
there's,
dimples, no dimples. She has
Mrs.
one trait, she'll have good.
Hi guys. It's falling. Miss Hegelman, this thing, it won't stay.
Let me see. We're at 20 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Guys, it's Miss Hegelman's birthday.
No, it's today.
No, it's today. Come say happy birthday or else she's gonna fail you guys.
Alright.
Wait, so is it short for,
Why am I having a problem with getting this to stand up?
Victor, oh, your pop socket is in. No, that.
There we go.
you'll put it out one more.
One more. Yeah, there. No, that now it's.
I need like a folder.
You need a better battery.
Oh. Thank you.
Well, Victor, I don't think you need biology class. You
Alright,
need
very good.
mechanics.
Okay, don't bump it. Okay, so number 16. Some of you are doing good, some of you got stuck. And it says a woman with no dimples, because no dimples is recessive, you have to use 2 little d's. If you have 1 capital D, they will have dimples. And then it says the man is heterozygous for dimples. Heterozygous means 1 of each. Make sure that noise is gonna show up on the video. Okay, so once you do your Punnett square and do your ratio, you're just saying for the genotype, how many like this, which are heterozygous for nipples, and there's 1, 2, so you'd say 2 have that combination and 2 have this combination. And then you reduce it down to lowest term, which is 1 to 1. For phenotype, it's asking how many will have dimples, how many won't. So, how many of these will have dimples, Gianna? 2. So say 2 dimples to 2 no dimples. So, the most important part when you set this up is make sure you take your time when you're reading the problem, because if you mix up one letter, everything gets thrown off. Number 17. Almond eyes are dominant to round eyes. So number 17. Almond is dominant. I'm going to use a capital A for almond, lowercase a for round. It says cross a woman who's homozygous dominant. Gianna, what should I use? Yep, 2 capitals, because that's homozygous. Charlie, what should I use for a man who's homozygous recessive?
Lowercase, 2 lowercases.
Yep, 2 lowercases, very good. So then you cross it through. And Gabe, what should I use for the genotype ratio?
100%.
Yeah.
Or 1.
It's a 100% almond. So I have to use this combination. Don't just say almond eyes. So you'd say 100%. Are they heterozygous or homozygous? Are they hetero or homozygous?
Oh, they're hetero.
Yep, so you say 100% are heterozygous almond. And then you'd say to 0. And that, or if you use whole numbers, you can say 4 to 0 and reduce it down to 1 to 0. Now, if you need help, you can always come back after school for tutorial. And the phenotype is how they look. You say they're all going to be almond eyes. So 100% almond eyes. Okay? So please come to school on Friday with those 2 pages done, pages 6 and 7. All right?
Do we have to figure out the classroom?
Well, you can take photos. Yep. All right, see you guys Friday.